My name is Bridget Foster. That day in the cold conference room of the lawyer's office under court supervision, the air was thick with the scent of victory, at least for them. My older brother Kyle shot up from his chair. His finger pointed straight at me. I sat silently, my crutches leaning casually against the table. This disabled burden doesn't deserve a single penny of the inheritance. He roared, his voice echoing off the four walls. Everything is mine. The company, the house, the accounts. All of it. My mother Judith smirked. Her eyes sparkled with triumph. My cousin Leah wore the exact same cruel smile. My father, Raymond, gaunt and pale from the cancer eating away at him day by day, only gave a weak nod. A faint agreement, but clear enough. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply slid the thick stack of documents across the polished table, picked up the pen, and signed. One signature after another. Foster Events, the company worth millions that we had built from nothing. The family home where I grew up. Every bank account, every asset, every dollar. All of it. Now legally belonged to Kyle. I gripped my crutches tightly, struggled to my feet, turned my back, and walked toward the door. Without a word. Kyle let out a loud, victorious laugh. He slapped his fiancée, Mackenzie, hard on the shoulder. "It's done, baby. We won everything." Then his lawyer, Douglas Crane, leaned in and whispered something. Kyle's eyes dropped to the final page. The addendum. The liability disclosure statement. As my hand was about to touch the doorknob, I heard the papers start to tremble in his hands. The color drained from Kyle's face in seconds. The flushed excitement turned ghost white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in 3 years, I stopped. I turned my head. And I smiled. Screen fades to black. Dramatic music swells. If you're screaming at your phone right now, wondering why I was smiling, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Comment Team Bridget if you already know he's about to regret every word he ever said. Trust me, you're going to want to watch this entire story. In your opinion, what was the one thing I kept for myself now? Let's start from the beginning. But to truly understand why I smiled that day, I have to take you back to the very beginning. My name is Bridget Foster. I'm 36 years old now, living alone in a small, cozy apartment on the quiet side of town. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and for the first time in my life, it feels like home. The story of how everything fell apart and how I eventually put myself back together starts when I was 20. I was driving home late one rainy night after helping set up a wedding reception. A truck ran a red light and slammed into the driver's side of my car. The impact crushed my left leg completely. Doctors fought for hours in the operating room, piecing bone and tissue back together. I went through 7 major surgeries over the next 2 years, endless physical therapy, and more pain than I can describe. In the end, they saved the leg, but it will never be strong again. I've walked with crutches ever since, and on bad days the ache reminds me it will be that way for the rest of my life. Before the accident, I was the energetic one in the family, full of ideas, always planning the next big thing. My parents, Raymond and Judith Foster, had started a little event planning business out of our backyard when I was a kid. It was humble at first: birthday parties, small weddings, graduation celebrations in the neighborhood. They rented cheap tents, used plastic chairs, handmade floral arrangements. My mom had an eye for design. My dad was great with clients. Kyle, my older brother by 4 years, wasn't very interested back then. He was more into sports and hanging out with friends. I, on the other hand, loved it. Even as a teenager, I was helping arrange tables, choose color schemes, coordinate with vendors. I dreamed of taking over one day and turning it into something bigger. After the accident, everything shifted. Suddenly, Kyle became the golden child, the only one capable of carrying the family legacy. He was healthy, able-bodied, charming when he wanted to be. My parents started looking at him as the future of foster events. I became the liability. The medical bills were enormous. The constant doctor visits, the equipment, the therapy. It all cost money. Worse than the financial strain was the emotional one. I could see it in their eyes, pity mixed with quiet resentment. Kyle graduated college with a business degree and stepped right into the company. Under his leadership, foster events grew fast. He moved operations out of the backyard into a proper warehouse, invested in high-end tents, professional lighting systems, sound equipment. He booked bigger venues, landed corporate contracts, expanded to multiple cities. Revenue skyrocketed. Everyone praised him endlessly. Kyle's a natural, they'd say. He's taking the company to the next level. I still wanted to contribute. I couldn't be on my feet all day setting up events anymore, but I could work from home. So I took on the bookkeeping part-time. I handled invoices, tracked expenses, reconciled bank statements, coordinated floral designs when needed, even helped plan layouts remotely. My salary was barely above minimum wage, symbolic really. Whenever anyone asked why I was paid so little, the answer was always the same: Bridget's just helping out the family. It's basically charity work. At family dinners, my mom would smile tightly and say, "We're so lucky Bridget can still pitch in considering everything." My dad would nod, avoiding my eyes. Kyle's attitude changed the most. At first, it was subtle, brushing off my suggestions, overriding my spreadsheet notes. Then, it became open dismissal. He'd say things right in front of me like, "Bridget, you don't need to worry about the numbers anymore. You're slowing the process down." Or, "Let me handle the real work. You just stick to the easy stuff." He never shouted it. He said it calmly, matter-of-factly, as if stating the weather. But every word cut deeper. Over the years, it became normal for him to talk about me like I was a burden the company had to carry out of obligation. I swallowed it all. I kept showing up, kept doing the books meticulously because I still loved the business we'd built together. And because more than anyone else, I knew every detail of those books, every invoice, every loan, every line item. That knowledge would one day become the most important thing I owned. But 3 years ago, everything took a much darker turn. 3 years ago, on a quiet late night when the whole house was finally asleep, I was still up. I'd driven over to my parents' place after dinner to finish the end-of-quarter books, something I still did every few months, even though no one ever thanked me for it. The office was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen. Everyone else had gone to bed hours earlier. I was reconciling the latest bank statements when something caught my eye: several large transfers to accounts I didn't recognize at first. Loans. Big ones. Hundreds of thousands flowing out for equipment upgrades and new warehouse expansion. But the revenue lines didn't match. Events booked looked normal, but deposits were way lower than projected. I told myself it was probably just timing. Maybe some clients hadn't paid yet. But curiosity got the better of me. I started cross-referencing invoices against payments, pulling up old purchase orders Kyle had signed off on. I dug deeper and deeper. By 3 a.m, my stomach was in knots. The picture was clear, and it was ugly. Kyle had taken out close to $2 million in bank loans right before the pandemic hit. High-end custom tents imported from Europe, state-of-the-art lighting rigs, a massive second warehouse lease in a prime location, new delivery vans. He'd bet everything on continued explosive growth, signing personally guaranteed notes with aggressive repayment schedules. Then COVID arrived, weddings canceled, corporate retreats postponed indefinitely, festivals shut down. One by one, the big contracts evaporated. Refunds had to be issued. Fixed costs stayed sky high. The company's real net worth had plummeted. Assets were maybe $1.5 million at best, mostly tied up in equipment that wasn't generating income. Liabilities, though, easily over $2 million and climbing with interest and late fees. We were deeply underwater and no one else seemed to know. I sat there in the silent house, heart-pounding, staring at the final spreadsheet I'd built. Shock doesn't even cover it. This wasn't just bad management. This was reckless gambling with the family legacy. My first instinct was to march upstairs, wake Kyle, and demand answers. Show my parents the numbers, force a family meeting. But I didn't. Something stopped me. Years of being dismissed, of being told I didn't understand the big picture because I wasn't out there hustling like he was. I knew exactly how it would go. Kyle would yell, call me paranoid, say I was misreading the data because I'd been out of the day-to-day operations too long. My mom would side with him. My dad would stay quiet. And in the end, they'd find a way to push me further out. So I stayed silent. Instead, I methodically photographed every critical document with my phone loan agreements, amortization schedules, vendor contracts, bank notices. I emailed the files to a private account, then copied everything to an encrypted external drive I kept locked in my apartment. I printed hard copies of the most damning pages and hid them in a fireproof box under my bed. I covered my tracks perfectly. No one ever knew I'd been digging. A few weeks later, I quietly contacted an estate attorney I found online. I remembered the separate inheritance my grandfather had left me when I was 25, roughly $500,000 in investments meant to be my safety net. Kyle and my parents had always grumbled about it, saying it wasn't fair that I got extra when the company needed capital. I transferred every penny into an irrevocable trust with my nephew Gavin, Kyle's only son. Listed as the sole beneficiary. No one else could touch it ever. Not even me once it was done. It was the one thing they couldn't take. And then I waited. I knew Kyle's ego would drive him to accelerate everything once my parents' health declined. I knew he'd want full control sooner rather than later. I knew he'd try to freeze me out completely. So I let him think I was broken, defeated, that I'd accept whatever crumbs they offered. Inside, though, something shifted that night in the office. I stopped being just the victim. I became patient. I started planning. 6 months ago, the timeline sped up dramatically. My father's diagnosis hit like a bomb. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Aggressive, advanced, maybe months left if the treatment worked at all. My mother's heart condition had worsened too. Severe blockages, risky surgery, constant monitoring. The doctors were blunt, time was short for both of them. Within days, they called an emergency family meeting in the living room of the big house. Kyle arrived first, Mackenzie right behind him, holding his arm like she already belonged there. I came alone, crutches clicking on the hardwood floor as I took the only empty seat in the corner. My parents sat side by side on the couch, looking smaller and grayer than I'd ever seen them. My father spoke first, voice weak but determined. We're transferring everything into a living trust now, he said. The company, the house, the accounts. We want Kyle to handle it all going forward so the family is taken care of. My mother nodded, eyes already on Kyle. You've earned it, son. You've built the business into what it is. No one looked at me when they said it. Not even once. Kyle didn't hesitate. From that week on, he started bringing Mackenzie to the house almost daily. She'd walk in like she owned the place, rearranging flowers on the entry table, suggesting new paint colors for the kitchen, asking the housekeeper to make her favorite coffee. She'd glance at me with this syrupy, sweet pity smile whenever I entered a room, like I was a stray cat someone had forgotten to feed. Kyle grew bolder, too. At dinners in front of everyone, he'd say things like, Bridget, with your condition, it's better if I handle everything. Let me take the burden off you. Or, you shouldn't have to worry about any of this. Just focus on staying comfortable. He said it calmly, almost kindly, as if he were doing me a favor. But the message was crystal clear. I was incapable, useless, better off invisible. My mother backed him every time. She'd tell her friends on the phone loud enough for me to hear. Finally, Bridget understands she can't contribute much anymore. It's such a relief that Kyle is stepping up. She'd pat my hand afterward and say, We're all so proud of you for knowing your limits, honey. Then there was my cousin, Leah Pierce. We'd been inseparable growing up. Sleepovers, secrets, the kind of friendship that felt like sisterhood. After my accident, she drifted, but she still called every few weeks to check in. Now those calls became constant. How are you holding up? What did the lawyers say? Are you thinking about fighting the trust? I answered vaguely politely. What I didn't know then was that every word went straight back to Kyle. She'd text him screenshots of our chats, relay my tone, my hesitations. She was his spy, and she played the concerned cousin perfectly. Even Gavin, my nephew, pulled away. He was 16 now, old enough to sense the shift in the family wind. Kyle had clearly talked to him because the boy who used to run to me for hugs suddenly barely spoke when I visited. He'd mumble hello, then disappear to his room. Once when I showed up unannounced with his favorite cookies, he peeked out, saw it was me, and pretended he was on a call so he wouldn't have to come downstairs. I felt it all closing in. The house that used to be home became foreign territory. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Decisions were made without me. Invitations to family outings dried up. I was being erased slowly and deliberately while everyone pretended it was for my own good. The isolation was suffocating. Nights alone in my apartment, I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would even notice if I stopped showing up altogether. But beneath the hurt, something hardened. They thought they were pushing me out gently, kindly, permanently. They had no idea I was already counting the days. A few weeks later, I took the first active step on my own. I booked a consultation with a lawyer I'd researched for months. Pamela Ortiz was known as one of the sharpest estate and trust attorneys in the state, tough, meticulous, no nonsense. Her office was downtown in a sleek high-rise, and when I walked in on my crutches, she greeted me with a firm handshake and zero pity in her eyes. I liked her immediately. I laid everything out. The living trust my parents had set up, the company's role in the family assets, my years of contribution, the way the transfer seemed designed to exclude me entirely. I showed her records of my work hours, emails proving my involvement in contracts and finances, even old tax returns listing my salary from foster events. Pamela leaned back after reviewing the files, tapping her pen thoughtfully. Bridget, you have a strong case here, she said. Your long-term contributions to the business give you equitable claims that could absolutely be challenged in probate. We could push for a fair division, maybe even force an independent valuation. If we move aggressively, Kyle wouldn't be able to steamroll this. I listened quietly, nodding along, letting my shoulders slump a little. I appreciate that, Pamela, I said softly, looking down at my hands. Really. But I don't want to fight. I just want it over quickly so everyone can be happy. I don't need the stress. Maybe it's better this way. She studied me for a long moment, eyebrows raised. Are you sure this isn't about weakness? It's about what you're entitled to. I'm sure, I replied, voice barely above a whisper. I've caused enough trouble already. Let's just sign whatever they want. Pamela sighed, making a note in her file. I could tell she thought I was giving up, folding under family pressure. She promised to review the final documents when they came, but warned me one last time that I was walking away from a lot. She had no idea I was counting on her believing exactly that. Meanwhile, Kyle's confidence went into overdrive. He showed up one weekend in a brand new luxury SUV, gleaming black with tinted windows and custom rims. He parked it prominently in the driveway, making sure everyone saw. Just a little upgrade, he said casually when my mother admired it. Things are looking up. A week later, he and Mackenzie jetted off to an exclusive resort in the Caribbean. Photos flooded social media, the two of them on white sand beaches, champagne sunsets, her in designer bikinis, him grinning with captions like "grateful for what's coming" and "big changes ahead, stay tuned." The comments poured in with congratulations, people assuming the big changes meant wedding bells or business windfalls. Kyle liked everyone. My mother couldn't stop talking about it. At her bridge club, her hair appointments, even to the neighbors over the fence, she gushed about her beautiful future daughter-in-law and how perfect Mackenzie was for Kyle. Then, almost as an afterthought, she'd add, "And Bridget's being so reasonable about everything. She's not contesting a thing." Such a relief. Leah kept up her routine calls, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "How are you feeling about the trust paperwork? Have you talked to Kyle lately? Anything I can do to help?" I gave her just enough vague answers to keep her hooked, knowing it all went straight to him. Gavin watched it unfold from the sidelines. I'd catch him sometimes in the hallway, or kitchen eyes flicking toward the new car, or Kyle's phone screen full of vacation photos. He looked uncomfortable, conflicted even, but he never said a word to me. He kept his distance, nodding politely when we passed, but never lingering. Everyone assumed I was retreating further into defeat. They praised my maturity. They pitied my acceptance. They celebrated their victory early. And every time someone underestimated me a little more, I felt the plan lock tighter into place. The day of the final inheritance signing arrived sooner than they expected. The conference room was larger than I remembered, with a long mahogany table and stern portraits on the walls. A probate judge sat at the head, neutral and official, there to oversee the final execution of the living trust amendments. Lawyers flanked both sides. My parents were present, but frail, my father in a wheelchair, my mother clutching tissues. Kyle sat front and center, practically vibrating with anticipation. His attorney, Douglas Crane, a tall, silver-haired man known for handling high-net-worth estates, had tried multiple times in the weeks leading up to this to convince Kyle to commission an independent appraisal of Foster events. Standard practice in transfers this size, Douglas had argued in emails and calls I later saw copies of, especially with commercial assets, protects everyone. Kyle brushed it off every time. "I know exactly what my company is worth," he snapped back in one recorded voicemail. "I built it. I don't need some outsider poking around and delaying things." Douglas sent formal letters recommending it anyway. Kyle refused in writing, impatient to close the deal before my parents' conditions worsened further. Now here we were. The judge nodded to proceed. The documents were thick, bound in blue folders. Page after page detailed the transfer, full ownership of Foster events, including all equipment and leases, the warehouse property, the family residence, every investment and bank account. Everything passed solely to Kyle. He signed with flair pen, scratching loudly, a wide grin on his face as he flipped each section. My mother beamed at him. Leah, seated nearby, gave an approving nod. Gavin slouched in the back corner, phone in hand but eyes on the table. I signed my disclaimers quietly, relinquishing any claim. No one paid much attention to me. Kyle finished with a triumphant flourish on the last signature page, sliding his copy back to Douglas. "Done," he said, leaning back. "Finally." Douglas cleared his throat and pointed to the final attachment clipped at the end. "Mr. Foster, you should review the addendum liability disclosure before we file. It's comprehensive." Kyle waved him off. "I've seen the summaries. It's fine." "But," Douglas insisted. "Please, for the record." Kyle sighed dramatically, picked up the addendum, and started skimming. At first his expression stayed cocky. Then his eyes narrowed. He slowed, going back to the top of the page. His brow furrowed. He flipped to the next sheet, then the next. The room grew unnaturally quiet. I watched every second of it. The color drained from his face in real time, cheeks flushing red at first from anger, then fading to ashen gray. His jaw tightened. The papers began to tremble in his grip. He shot to his feet, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is fraud," he shouted, voice cracking. "Who buried these numbers? 2 million in bank debt, vendor liens. This isn't what we agreed." Douglas remained calm, voice steady. "I advised an independent appraisal repeatedly, Kyle. You declined each time in writing. The disclosure is complete and accurate per the trust requirements. You're assuming all assets and all liabilities." Kyle slammed the papers down. "You should have forced me to read this sooner." The judge raised a hand. Sir, please. The documents were provided for review weeks ago. All parties had access. The liability schedule is appended exactly as required by law. Upon execution, transfer is irrevocable. The debts follow the assets. Kyle's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. He looked wildly around the table at my parents, at Leah, at Douglas, as if waiting for someone to fix it. No one did. Outside the slightly ajar door, Mackenzie had been listening. I saw her shadow first, then her face as she peeked in. Her eyes widened at Kyle's outburst. She took in his panic, the judge's finality, Douglas shaking his head. Her expression shifted from curiosity to realization to pure alarm. Without a word, she grabbed her designer handbag from the side table, turned on her heel, and walked briskly down the hall. The click of her heels faded toward the elevator. She didn't look back once. In the corner, Gavin lowered his phone. He'd been recording discreetly, but now he just stared, mouth slightly open. For the first time, he saw his father, the unbreakable, always right Kyle, completely unravel. Eyes wide, hands shaking, voice reduced to a desperate stammer as he begged Douglas for options that didn't exist. The judge stamped the final copies. Transfer complete. Court supervision concluded. Kyle sank back into his chair, head in his hands. The victory he'd celebrated for months was now his alone, along with every penny of debt he'd never bothered to verify. Just a few weeks later, the fallout hit like an avalanche. Vendors wasted no time. Lawsuits arrived almost daily, unpaid invoices for lighting rentals, tent suppliers demanding repayment, florists and caterers who'd been stiffed on deposits. Banks moved faster. Repossession crews showed up at the warehouse with court orders, loading trucks with the expensive equipment Kyle had bragged about for years. The gates were chained shut within a month. Foster Events officially ceased operations. The website went dark. Social media pages stopped updating. The phone lines were disconnected. What had once been a thriving brand became a ghost. The family home followed soon after. Kyle couldn't cover the mortgage payments once the business revenue vanished. Notices piled up, then the foreclosure auction date was set. My parents had to pack decades of memories into a small rental apartment on the other side of town. Kyle's only option left was filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Everything non-exempt was liquidated to pay creditors a fraction of what was owed. His credit score plummeted into the low 500s, where it would stay ruined for at least the next 10 years. No loans, no new credit cards, no financial recovery in sight. My mother started calling me the day the warehouse was seized. The first voicemail was shaky. "Bridget, honey, please pick up. I didn't know it was this bad. Your father and we had no idea about the loans." The next ones dissolved into tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you more. Please call me back. We need you." She left dozens, each one more desperate, claiming ignorance, begging forgiveness. I didn't know the debt was that much, I swear. I listened to a few, then blocked the number. No response. No explanation. Silence. Leah tried next. Texts at first. "I feel awful about everything. I never meant for it to go this far." Then, longer messages apologizing for passing information, for siding with Kyle, for drifting after my accident. She asked to meet to talk, to make amends. I read them once and deleted the thread. No reply. Gavin was different. He started digging on his own. He broke into Kyle's old office files, found the backup hard drives, cross-referenced bank statements he wasn't supposed to see. Piece by piece, he uncovered the full timeline, the reckless expansion, the hidden loans, the moment I discovered it all, and stayed quiet. One evening, he showed up at my apartment, unannounced, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes red from crying. "I get it now," he said quietly. "Everything you did. Everything they did to you." He asked if he could stay. Not just visit, stay. He was done watching his father implode and drag everyone down with him. I said yes. We turned the spare room into his space. For the first time in years, my little apartment felt fuller, warmer. With the small nest egg I'd protected in the trust money that had grown quietly over the years, I enrolled in an advanced event planning certification online. I studied styling trends, sustainable decor, intimate gatherings. Then I launched my own tiny studio, Bridget's Celebrations. No massive warehouses, no debt, no corporate contracts. Just beautiful, thoughtful parties for clients who valued quality over flash. Word spread slowly. Old clients who remembered my touch from the early Foster days started reaching out. Bookings grew. I worked from home, hired freelancers when needed, kept overhead low. For the first time, the business was truly mine and profitable from month one. I went no contact with the rest. When my father passed a year later, I didn't attend the funeral. I grieved alone in my own way for the father he'd been before everything changed. I never visited my mother in her new apartment, never answered the occasional letters she sent through Gavin. Kyle. I heard rumors, odd jobs, living in a studio, avoiding anyone from the old life. I didn't seek confirmation. I cut every tie that had ever hurt me. No explanations, no final confrontations, no second chances. Some might call it cold. I call it peace. Gavin graduated high school living with me, then started community college while helping with the studio on weekends. We built traditions, Sunday dinners, movie nights, planning dream events together. He became the family I chose, and through it all, I finally understood something deeply. Money can't buy real family, the kind rooted in respect, loyalty, and love. Greed doesn't just destroy wealth. It leaves you truly, completely alone. That smile in the conference room doorway. It wasn't just satisfaction. It was freedom. Thank you for listening to my story.